Hi, hello, welcome to my library. This is my garage. My name is Katelyn and I am a college application editor, which means I've read hundreds of Common Apps. I'm also a mystery ghostwriter. Spooky. And today I'm gonna help you write your Common App essay because it's not that hard once you know what they want. I'm also going to be doing a case study with She's the Man to help you figure out how you can take any story and put it into a formula that will give you an essay that is going to grab your reader's attention and let them know what they want to know about you. So what do they want? Because those questions are so vague. They're really the only purpose of the questions that they give you is to prompt you into showing them some sort of personal growth. But what you want to be thinking here is that an admissions reader is just that. They are a reader. They want a story. They do not want a list of your activities or a long string of attributes about you. No, please. So if they're a reader who wants a story, what they really want is a fulfilling character arc. So if you look at this chart like you have in every English class you've ever taken, you'll see these different labels of like the exposition, rising action, climax, falling action, and resolution. So now when you're thinking about these prompts, think of a story that you have to tell. Something you've done in the past that was really difficult, something you're really proud of. The key here is that it has changed the way you navigate life after this event, preferably in the last 2 or 3 years. High school years is good. What you don't want to do is show a moment from very early childhood because it could have been very foundational and forming for you, but it has not changed you recently. And that's what they want to see. And the change is the most important part. Just like when you go to read a book, you want to see a character that has learned something and changed because of it. And that's exactly what your reader wants to see. They want to see how you learned something and changed because of it. And they want to see how that lesson that you learned will continue to change, how you navigate the world, and your general view of how you want to move forward. So you'll see a lot of videos that tell you what types of stories not to do, and a lot of those are really, really good because once you see so many of a certain type of story, they start to blend together, and what you want to do is stand out. You want to think of something that's kind of unique that you've done, and if not, that's fine. Like if you don't have anything, that's fine. Like when I went to go apply to college, I had a very general, I played sports, I did good in school type of like life. There was nothing super amazing that I'd done that I could put in an essay. So if that's you too, there is still a way you can make that unique. And what I want to warn against is the life-changing service trip story, because for a lot of people you can see it impacted them, but it didn't really change their life or change their worldview enough that it has changed the way they live their daily lives. It's great to see on a service trip and realize, you know, I have it really good, like I shouldn't take things for granted, stuff like that, but that is a very, very general viewpoint, and while it's good to understand just for yourself, that's not something that's going to interest your reader at all. So think through your activities, any jobs, anything like that. So once you have your story, let's go back to that little plot graph thing and start at the inciting incident. You only have 650 words. So whatever you would put in an exposition of this story that you have, you just want to cut it out. So let's just say you've been playing soccer your whole life. You love it so much. You've always played forward. You've played on the same team for years. This is all exposition and it's not going to really grab your reader, especially if you put it in the first paragraph. No one really cares about it. You know what people do care about is the inciting incident. So let's take Viola from She's the Man. Her inciting incident is when she's told she will not have a soccer team that year.
We want to try out for the boys' team.
Anything besides that?
Again, you only have 650 words. How do you fit this into a short amount of time? Let's pretend I'm Viola. When my school's girls' soccer team season got canceled, I wasn't allowed to play on the boys' team to save my scholarship because I was told I wasn't tough enough to handle it. I decided to go undercover as a boy, as my older brother to be specific, at our rival school to prove I had what it took to win. 2 sentences. You have my attention. That is so much more gripping than saying something like, I've been playing soccer since I was 6 years old and I play forward. Like, do you see the difference here? We can do more. We can do more. Let's give your reader a scene. Congratulations, you have been promoted to novelist. But what scene should you write? What moment should you place your reader in? The tipping point of your climax. So I personally recommend present tense to put them in the scene. So what is the climax of She's the Man? It's the soccer game when they find out that she's a girl. So here's how you can set that scene in a first-person novel type of way that's going to catch your reader. Remember, they're not just an admissions counselor, they're also a reader here. The ball caresses the instep of my cleats as I sprint across the field. I miss the feeling of sunshine on my head. I always wear a wig these days. My disguise is the only reason I'm even allowed on the field. It's the only reason anyone thinks I'm tough enough to play in this game. But I could have ignored that. Could have focused on the win if it hadn't been for the angry whistle that stopped the game. Sebastian Hastings is a girl. See how this is better than starting with the inciting incident? You've dropped your reader like right into the thick of it. So now you can hit pause and backtrack. So you have your scene and now you can explain it with the inciting incident. For your admissions, you're not going to want to just give one moment and then leave it. What you want to show is what you learned in that moment that applies through your entire life, not just in a soccer setting. So let's look at the movie and see what Viola learned during the course of this entire time in her life. She learned that she was not as great at soccer as she thought she was. She learned that even the guys who appeared to be the most tough could also be very vulnerable. She also learned that lying to prove a point maybe wasn't the best way to go about this.
This isn't how I wanted it to happen, and I didn't want to hurt you, but I just wanted to prove that I was good enough.
So think about this in your own essay. Like, what did you learn throughout this course of your story that you're trying to share? And for the things that you've learned, try to keep it 2 to 3 maybe, but remember how it felt to learn those lessons. The whole point of the essays is more of an emotional connection that you can get and show your thought process. They want to see that you can think critically, that you can take a moment in your life and pull life lessons from it that aren't just handed to you on a platter. If they wanted your stats, they would go to your activities list. So in this case, if we're going to take the lessons and talk about how Viola felt, you can put that into a paragraph. During those months of practice, I learned that I wasn't as amazing at soccer as I originally thought. After years of thinking I was the best, I had to ask for help again and be open about my shortcomings. It was embarrassing at first, but when I let myself be vulnerable and ask for help, my teammates stepped up. In turn, they opened up to me, and I realized that even the tough guys on our team were vulnerable in ways I didn't expect. When they learned I was a girl and had been lying for the whole season, I felt awful. I betrayed their trust, and I'll be forever grateful for the second chance they gave me. So remember how we talked about character and character arc? This is the moment in the story where the character realizes they've been wrong. Maybe about everything, maybe their whole life is a lie. Like, that moment, but probably in these essays, it's not going to be like a huge revelation, but like for Viola, she realizes that she betrayed their trust and that hurt not only them, but her as well. So now it's time to give your reader the sort of satisfying part of the story. So we've told them the opening scene, this moment where you're about to make a big decision, like it's been revealed that you're a girl on the soccer team. And then you go to the inciting incident. That's your backstory, but it's still gripping. Then you've explained what you've been learning throughout this story, like the emotional connection, what you've learned and how you felt about it. And now we're gonna press play on that scene we started at. Bring them back into the movie. Convinced that a girl wouldn't be tough enough to make a difference, the rival team agreed to let me play. Not as Sebastian, but as Viola. My team trusted me to take the winning shot, not because I was a girl or a boy, but because I had proven my strength throughout the season. So now's the time for the conclusion. Because this isn't a finished story, you're selling yourself to the school. You want them to believe that the best is coming. And so, like, with this plot chart that we have, you want there to be an arrow going up at the end. That is your conclusion, because you're going to show what you learned and how you're going to apply it in the future. So before, we talked about what you were learning and how it made you felt, and now you're going to take, this is the solid overall lesson that I got from this time in my life, and this is how I have applied it, and this is how I'm going to apply it. You are essentially trying to sell them the sequel to this story. So here's the questions you want to ask yourself about how you have applied the lesson you learned so far. With the mini lessons that you learned, what is the most important one? How do they relate together to make one idea that you are going to internalize and carry forward, and the way you're going to carry it forward is by changing your actions. But now you gotta prove it. How has it changed your actions? You need examples. So if Viola learned that she wasn't as great as she thought she was, and that even the toughest people are vulnerable, then what she's learned is that toughness and vulnerability are not tied to a specific title, whether that be girl, boy, or any other title you could hold. So take a look at this next paragraph that will set up your final conclusion. This season showed me that toughness isn't tied to a label of male, female, or any other title I might bear. In the same way, through my teammates, I have learned not to label someone simply as tough, and have instead remembered that everyone is capable of vulnerability and needs safe spaces and relationships in which to express themselves. Since the season ended, I've been working on the Complexity Project to raise awareness of the strengths of disabled students that are not readily recognized, and connect them with other students through united soccer teams to fight the stigma against the intellectually disabled in our society. Okay, so you see what we did there. Realizing that her toughness was not dependent on being a girl or a boy, and that vulnerability is not necessarily connected to toughness. We've shown that Viola recognizes the complexity of every person she comes in contact with. Then we've connected another activity of hers. So if she's working on United soccer teams with students of all abilities, she is now realizing the complexity of people despite what their ability might label them, and she's putting it towards something good to fight stigmas. So think about your overall story and your other activities. What do you do for fun? Where do you volunteer? Clubs, stuff like that. Try to find those connections of the life lesson you took and how you've been able to apply them in those other areas. So now we're going to give your reader a look to the future. How will the lesson you've learned help you as you move forward? So for Viola, how will imagining people complexly make her more successful in the future? Bonus points if this relates to the career you want to pursue, aka the reason you're going to college. How has the lesson prepared you to be more successful than you would have been without it? So let's pretend that Viola wants to be a physical therapist. This works really well because she's been talking about sports, and she's going to need that level of understanding about people's toughness and their vulnerability. As I work toward becoming a physical therapist, I'll remember to view not only other students and coworkers complexly, but my patients as well. I refuse to underestimate the toughness and determination of recovery patients, but I will also remember to be a safe space for them to express vulnerability, whether that be physical or emotional. I hope this awareness will allow me to form better relationships with my patients so I can better serve them in their healing process. So that's given you a clear look to the future. If she had not gone through this process of going undercover as a guy and realizing that these guys were complex, vulnerable people, then she wouldn't be able to apply that understanding of human complexity into her job in the future. So I would say that's a pretty solid draft. You've told a story and you've focused on character development. In this case, you are a character. So the big three, she's made a memorable impression. She is a girl who dressed as a boy for soccer, and I'm not easily going to forget that essay. If you have like a weirdly specific interest, let me have it. That is what I want to read. Number 2, you have given evidence of growth, Viola's ability to view others complexly. And 3, you have looked to the future. She's explained what she wants to do, and the lessons she's learned will apply to that in the future. I also have a few tips of what not to do. You do not want to go way in the past. Like I mentioned early in the video, keep it in your high school years unless you have a very specific, crazy, cool thing to share. Do not be generic. Keep it as unique as you possibly can. If you're choosing between writing your essay about sports and maybe some really cool internship you had at a museum last summer, go with the internship even if it's shorter than how many years you've spent working on your sport. The museum is going to be far more interesting, and far fewer students will have that experience because lots and lots of students play sports. And don't be vague about your lesson. If your whole point of your essay is that I'm a hard worker, that's not going to stand out. No one is going to turn in an essay and say that they aren't a hard worker. And for our example, Viola could have said she was a hard worker because she was. She spent lots of time practicing to get better. She worked her butt off, but the ability to imagine other people with different layers of vulnerability and toughness and complexity is far more interesting and much more compelling as an admissions reader, because not everybody's going to get that perspective out of sports. You see what I mean? A few more things you don't want to do is say the words, in this essay, I am going to explain. Don't refer to the essay as itself, just tell a story. When you read a book, it's very rare an author is going to be like, this book is going to be about the story of blah, blah, blah. Just go into it. Do not put anyone else down to make yourself look better. Don't say you're a harder worker than the other people on your team. Notice that Viola did work harder than a lot of the people, and notice how we never mentioned that terrible ex-boyfriend. That was one of the reasons she wanted to be better. It adds negativity into your essay and does not make you look good. But on the entire other hand, don't put yourself down. Don't be afraid to brag humbly. You don't want to say something like, I was so amazing at this, but you can say things like, I had the opportunity to do this, and I had success in this, blah, blah, blah. Everything is an opportunity, man. An opportunity. Don't go for pity. You do not want your reader to feel bad for you. The reader does not want to feel bad for you, not because they're not going to care, but because that's the only impression they're going to have of you other than your activities list and your resume. I mean, maybe an interview if that's the type of school you're going for, but they don't want to see someone who is just trudging through difficulty, and because those can often turn very negative and also can be kind of whiny. Even if you have every right to whine about something horrible going on, that's not what you want to focus your essay on. If the lesson you're trying to portray that you've learned comes from a very sad or upsetting story in your life, keep it short and keep most of the essay positive. So something horrible could happen. You could take a lesson from it. And then what you're going to want to focus on is how you have moved forward with the lesson you learned. So all the amazing things you've done since then, how you're going to apply this into an awesome career. Keep it positive. Please don't talk about significant others or breakups unless you've got something really good to come out of it. It is just kind of uncomfortable. Don't assume your reader agrees with your political or religious beliefs. Unless you're going for like a religious school and that is part of your essay, you can totally mention what you think about these things, but don't write it in a way that says you think your reader agrees with you, because they might not. Keep it about you, keep it about how you grew from the lessons that you've learned. Since we did use a sports essay as an example, like I said before, tons of people write about sports because it's a big part of a lot of teenagers' lives. I feel like we should address that idea by itself. You can do a sports essay. If that is your big thing, that's what you want to write about, write the sports essay, but keep the realization unique and show how you've applied it in other areas of your life outside of the sports world. What is not unique? I don't give up. Hard work pays off. I'm determined. They're not unique. So many people do them. Injury recovery essays. Again, don't focus on the injury or the pain so much as you do the positives and what you have learned about it. And I would recommend keeping it a very small part or choosing something more unique, because again, so many kids play sports, we've gotten a lot of injury essays. This case study with She's the Man is a very like general how to structure the essay. I'll be doing some examples of the specific prompt questions with other case studies with like characters, and we can better work on the formula for the question you want to answer. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments. We can talk about a few brainstorming ideas. Please like this video if you liked it, if it helped you, and subscribe for more of this stuff. I am also a book channel / I talk about The Bachelor / there's some art stuff on here. My name's Katelyn. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!